It's not quite burned out yet. You turn your smile into a frown. You're not quite ready for the clown. Open up right now.
Welcome to this edition of the Wispy Mop Music Acoustic Radio Podcast Series. I'm your host, Todd, middle initial C. Walker. Yes, that's right, it's me. And sitting next to me is the publisher of, I always get it wrong.
Guitar International.
Guitar International magazine, which is an online magazine. But on top of that, he is a singer-songwriter, currently recording, has some already done. Mm-hmm. And he's, like the rest of us, he's a guitar collector. Not so much because he set out to be a guitar collector, but you know how we just acquire guitars, don't we?
We all have gas.
That's right. RickLanders over here.
Thank you. Appreciate
and,
it.
you know, the thing that I want to bring up first is you mentioned to me when we did an audio podcast that you worked or you were at Abbey Road at some point.
I was.
So
yes.
tell me a little bit about how you got there.
Sure. I was a staff assistant at a college over in England, in Coventry, England. It was a teacher's college. And during the summer, I had time off. And a friend of mine worked for Virgin Records in Coventry at the shop. And he asked if I would work with him for a while. And I said I would. And so it was basically basic shop work, selling stuff and moving stuff, inventory around. And he said, hey, I need to get down to Abbey Road Studios with the British singer-songwriter, Roy Harper, who's now a legend, and he was kind of a legend back then. And I said, yeah, I'd love to go. So we took the train down and got to Abbey Road, went in, and we were in Studio 2, which was kind of vacant other than Roy had a chair, and he had his guitar, he had a mic, and then the 3 or 4 of us that were there, we just sat around and just watched him. And next door to us, and he worked on this album called HQ. It's called HQ there. Here it's called When an Old Cricketer Leaves the Crease. So he had different versions of it based on where it was distributed. Next door, Pink Floyd were recording some album, I don't know what it was, but Davey Gilmour and Roy both worked on each other's albums as well. And then we went down to the galley together, everybody, and we had whatever we ate down there. It was a small little galley with almost like picnic tables. And behind us, Pink Floyd were there, and they had ordered Chinese takeout and champagne. And that was kind of interesting to us. I was probably 23 at the time, maybe 24. And so that was enjoyable. And Roy just started laying on tracks to his one song of his album. And I think he probably had 20 tracks on the one song. It was amazing. He just kept going over and over until he got it right. He's a perfectionist. And he's still around, and he still does wonderful and beautiful music. So that was a real treat for me to get to Abbey Road. So.
Now, does it seem somewhat surreal to you now, thinking back that you were actually there and you met or you were in the presence of these people?
Yeah, I feel very humbled, but very fortunate that I had that situation that just cropped up out of the blue, you know, mm-hmm. and sometimes things that happens in our lives. And to be able to even get to Abbey Road was cool. And it wasn't as dramatic as I thought it would be because the room was big. If you've seen pictures of the Beatles in Studio 2 where we were, it had a real high ceiling, but there was nothing in it. When the Beatles were there were like the Hammond organ, the Mellotron, and their guitars and Beatles. So it was, but yeah, I look back and go, oh, wow, that's it was a cool little story to have, you know, in my background. And there are a few others, but that was one. I got picked up by the lead singer, can't remember his name off, Alan Clark from the Hollies.
Sure, yeah.
He picked me up he had a little van, as they do in England, with no windows in the back. And he told me that he had been the lead singer, or he was the lead singer of the Hollies. And I said, oh, that's pretty cool. And he looked at me, he said, you don't believe me, do you? And I really didn't. I thought that Graham Nash was the lead singer at that time, and I said, "Yeah, I believe it." And then we had whatever conversation we had, and he dropped me off. I was hitchhiking down to the southern part of England, Lyme Regis camp, and I did a bit of camping back then. And so I met him, but I didn't know it was really. Now I'm embarrassed. It's like, oh, the conversation I could have had. So we could have sung together, but we didn't. So
isn't it quite amazing, though? And I've been fortunate to meet a couple what I would call famous people.
Yes.
I used to own surf shops, and I was a surfer, so I met some of the world champion surfers. What always struck me was how normal they were away from their limelight.
Yes. Yeah.
And it sounds like he was.
Yeah, he was very normal. I've met quite a few people doing interviews. Les Paul, for example, I interviewed him twice up in New York, and he was wonderful. He's the nicest guy you'd want to meet. I was at the Iridium when he was doing his sound check. I think that was the second time. That was the first time I met him, I think. And so they finished their sound check, he and his band, and he came around and he said, "Who are you fellas?" And so we told him he was. He said, "Oh," and he sat down and talked to us for like 40 minutes. I'm trying to figure out how I can get my recorder going. I didn't get it. I wanted to be unobtrusive. I wasn't able to do that. But I interviewed him twice, and that was great. I've got a photo of Les and I together holding his near beer. He had a near beer. And I said, "Let's get a picture." I said, "I want to hold it." So I think I put my arm around him and held him, and he's smart. He's a nice guy, very nice guy, very bright, obviously, and in the Inventors Hall of Fame. So what a treat to meet Les. And I can't say other interviews have been downhill, but he was very special. And I interviewed a bunch of other people, Slash and Judy Collins, Arla Guthrie, Steve Earle, Jesse Colin Young, probably 200 folks overall, maybe.
And this is all for Guitar International, right?
Yes, that was all for Guitar International.
So how did you get into the publishing business?
Yeah, I had offered to write a story for another website, and I think that was the one where I went up to the Crossroads auction up in New York. Christie's auction house had the auction of all these guitars that Eric Clapton was auctioning off, as well as a lot of his friends. So there were guitars by B.B. King, Mark Knopfler, Steve Ray Vaughan's Lenny guitar was there. Eric's Blackie was there, and his ES-335 Cherry that he played with Cream. And so I was able, and they let me in the room. The person I had met to get up there said, "Oh, the guitars are in this room." So I'm in there by myself. So I'm like touching them. I didn't play any. I did move Stevie Ray Vaughan's case around, but when I told him it was better looking from the other side, because there was markings all over it. So I flipped that around and I touched Lenny, got a picture of myself from another guy who eventually came in, another journalist. And then I went over and I saw the ES-335 Cherry Gibson, which everybody knows that if you know Clapton, and Blackie, which everybody knows. And so I got my picture with both of those, and the stenciling that says Cream on the guitar case of the Gibson. That was a hoot. So I did that. So I wrote that article. And then the guy asked if I wanted to start another magazine. So we started Modern Guitar Magazine, which started in 2004. And then in 2008 or probably 2009, there were issues with him. And so I don't want to go too deeply into that, but there were serious issues. And he basically hid the site from me, and there was money that was not getting to the account. And he actually admitted that he was taking the money. So I closed him off. I was not a webmaster, but I found a Dr. Matt Warnock, who was also writing for me at the time. And the site was legally in my name. And so I was able to reconstitute it. It cost me about $10,000. And I started Guitar International using the same stuff, the same content. I just changed the look and used WordPress, which I could use. And Matt was also very, very helpful. He's now one of the best online instructors in the world, Dr. Matt Warnock. And wonderful guy. We're still friends. He and I stopped working together probably about 7 or 8 years ago. It was a friendly departure. And in fact, I just spoke with him last week online, and he's doing great, and I'm doing okay.
So when you were a kid,
yes,
would you have ever thought that you would be a publisher at some point?
No, I didn't. I did publish kind of a book. I worked for the Navy, and I put together a project which was essentially a book. It was the history of the command I worked with, and I interviewed the two-star admiral who was the head of it was a major Navy SysCom NAVFAC, a Naval Facilities Engineering Command. And so I kind of did a book at that point. I did some writing. But when I was a kid, no. When I was a kid, I was in a garage band in Ecorse, Michigan, south of Detroit. And there were 2, 3, 4 of us, I think. And
you weren't the Ambroy Dukes, were you?
No, but my brother actually played with Ted Nugent at one point, and Ted apparently didn't face the audience. My brother was a drummer. And he said he was real shy, so he's changed quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the garage band, we had a lead guitar player who bought a Stratocaster, and I was like really jealous. It was like, oh, he's like gorgeous, guitar. I had a Silvertone. We had a bass player who played a big K bass, and he was probably 5'6" at the time. He's 12 or 13. He ended up playing with Mitch Ryder in the Detroit Wheels.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And Savage Grace. And I've got a picture of him with Stevie Ray Vaughan because they at least probably shared a bill at some point. And so that was cool. And his name's Mark Goujon, and a really nice guy. And he probably will be on my album. We've talked about that. He'll send me a bass track. A guy named Tom Ceylon, who sounded like Mick Jagger. And he's with a group called Shovelhead. So I guess he rides motorcycles. And my brother Kerry, who played drums, and he still plays drum. He's just bought a DW Maple set, white, beautiful. And he's also played guitar, and he had a great voice.
So every member of that...
We're all still playing.
You're all still playing?
Yes, and we started back in 1964.
Wow.
And we're all still out there doing something and getting old, but, we're still having fun with music. Music is, it's great no matter what age you are. And I guess at some point all you are is a listener, but there's some great songs that will give you most of the time, great memories. So sometimes not so great. But
now, do you enjoy making music better now than you did as a youth, or is it just sort of different?
It's different because I was doing mostly cover songs when I was pretty young. And then I moved to D.C. I was busking on the streets in Georgetown, and I don't think I'd written any songs at that point. So I was doing like Tim Buckley and folk singer type stuff. And then played a couple clubs in D.C. and in Northwest, Columbia Station, and a few others. And then I just started playing for girlfriends and dogs and cats that I've had over the years, and eventually my wife and dogs and cats that we still have. And in 2018, I decided I would do an open mic, which I did at the Herndon at an arts place. And I played 2 songs, and the manager asked me to be his first featured singer-songwriter. And I was kind of surprised because I was really just kind of dorking around. I went up just as on a lark. And so I went and I did that. And then I think it was the next time I played, which was to be featured, a fellow in the audience named Ron Goad was there, and he walked up to me after. He says, "We need to talk." And if you know Ron Goad, Ron Goad is like the hub of all at least the folk Americana type music in the D.C. area, although he's much broader than that. And so he's been like a great friend for the last maybe 4 years. And he subsequently, I asked him to be my or our band's drummer, and he said, "I've been waiting 1.5 years." I said, "I didn't know." And so I have a bass player from Shenandoah Run, who's John Warrants, who's a great player. Jim Nagel is playing dobro guitar, and he studied under Mike Aldridge from the Silham Scene. Mm-hmm. So if you know anything about Mike Aldridge, he was a legend. Now he's since passed away. And then I've just recently picked up a woman named Kim Zhao. She's Chinese, and she's been playing since she was 5. She's a brilliant violinist. And so she's now part of the main group. And then I've got a couple other backup people. Tim Spong, who's British. He plays bass when I need him. Tom Smith, who's a lead guitar player who studied jazz when he was 13. So he's really remarkable. And I think is that it? Oh, and then we just picked up another drummer to back up Ron when Ron can't make it. Although they're both playing together on some gigs, and they enjoy doing that. So sometimes we do that. We have to split the money 5 ways instead of 4 ways. So that's okay. We're playing really for the music. So Erwin Analik. He plays djembe and he plays a full kit, and he's really, really nice. All these guys are really nice, and Kim is wonderful. They're all great people. Otherwise, I wouldn't work with them. So we have fun, and we're doing my songs. So I started writing my own songs probably in earnest around 2019, right around there. I had a few that I'd written over the years, but now I've written probably 50 or 60 since 2000.
I was going to say, because I was on your website this morning just to kind of look at things, and I went down that list, and I kept scrolling. I'm thinking, now, wait a minute, these can't all be
they're all
your
recent.
songs.
Yeah, they're all my songs. Yeah.
Because not all of us are that prolific.
I'm fortunate, very fortunate. So it surprises me sometimes when I come up with a song. I'll start noodling around, and then I'll get maybe the first line. Sometimes it's just trash lyrics, and I have to go back and I edit them totally. In fact, one time I wrote a song for Rob McDonald, and I was in a Zoom class with him, and so I wrote this song, and then we were supposed to present it the next day fully, and I decided it wasn't appropriate for general audiences. And I went, this is a little dirty. I didn't mean it to be, but you could construe it that way. And so that evening, I redid the song, and it's called. This one is called Red. I think it was Red. May have been Judy Sill. I think it's the one about Judy Sill. Judy Sill was a songwriter in the 1970s, who passed away when she was 29. So I wrote a song, at least in tribute to her, not totally about her, and it turned out to be a pretty good song. So,
well, another of your songs is, I don't know if it's necessarily a tribute to the Pink Moon Man.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Nick Drake.
Open Up, yeah, that is a tribute to Nick Drake. It isn't. It's sort of about him because it's about somebody who is dealing with somebody who has depression. And this person who's a singer wants them to open up, which can be impossible for some people. So it's a very difficult thing. So I wanted to do something not necessarily about Nick Drake, but about that situation where his sister adored him. And so it's mostly it would be from someone like his sister to a sibling or a friend or a loved one who was suffering from depression, and they're trying to help. And sometimes you just can't. But Open Up is a tribute to Nick Drake, who I just discovered just before that. So
now, do you set out to write a song? Do you have a subject matter in mind, or it just pops into your head when you're doodling?
Sometimes it pops in my head, and then I'll write it, and I'll go, well, this is about this. On occasion, I will write a song about a certain situation. When I was younger, I wrote a song about the Civil War, and it's called Wintered Sky. And I still play
Great
that.
Title.
Thank you. And so I still play that mostly by myself, not so much with the band yet, but I think we will. And so that was one I did. I wrote a song called 1913 Stag Canyon No. 2, and I had taken a course from John McCutcheon down at the Highlander down in Tennessee. And about 6 months after that, I thought, well, and he liked my voice, I think, more than anything, and mentioned that. It's actually stopped me from playing. He says, you got a really good voice. I went, oh, okay. How are my songs? How are my songs? So I didn't know. And so 6 months later, I said, okay, I'm going to take what I learned from John, and I'll write a real folk song. And so I started looking around, I was thinking different titles and different subject matters, and I thought coal mining would be a good one. And so I looked up coal mining disasters and discovered that in 1913, there was a horrendous, tragic story about an explosion in a Dawson, New Mexico coal mine. And 10 years later, in 1923, there was another explosion where some of the men who passed away in the 1923 explosion were the sons of some of the men who died in 1913. So the song is called 1913 Stag Canyon No. 2, which is the name of the shaft, the mining shaft. And they were probably the second worst disasters in coal mining. So I wrote that song, and at the end, the fathers and sons come together at the end. And so I sent that out to a few people, and then some people in Raton, New Mexico, who were descendants of those folks who passed away, asked if I'd come out and play at their next anniversary. So they have a descendants reunion every 2 years. I said, yeah. So I went out there, and a friend of mine brought me 4 guitars. The guy who built this guitar, green guitars. And so I played one of his, and I played at a VFW hall in Raton, and I didn't know at the time, but Townes Van Sant has a song about Raton, The Snows of Raton. I went, oh, that's good coincidence. And then the next day I played the cemetery for about 500 people, and they are now calling that their song, which I'm very honored and humbled by that. So to have their loved ones pay tribute to.
So how long, and maybe there's no average, but
yeah,
how long from the time you say, okay, this is the first line or this is the first chord until you're happy with the song? Is there any, or is it every song is different?
Every song tends to be different. I ended up buying a Gibson CF100 from a fella, and it turned out, which I didn't know at the time, there's some etching on the back of the neck, and I didn't ask much about it. I figured I could sand it down. And so I bought the guitar, and then I said, well, whose was this? He says, well, this was my mother. She gave it to me, and some year, and 10 years later, he actually got it, possession of it. But the family is a well-known bluegrass family. This fellow's great-grandfather was named Emmett, I can't remember his last name. Anyway, he purportedly won the first gold medal at Galax for fiddling, and Emmett Lundy. And you can still go online and hear some of the songs he does, and a lot of people still play his songs. So I got that guitar, and I can't remember where I was headed with that because it's such an in-depth story. I became friends with him, and
it was time to write a song. How long does it take you to write a song?
Right. So the point where that was, I got that. I let the guitar sit for a day. The next morning, about 5 o'clock in the morning, I got up and wrote this song in about 15 minutes, and it turned out to be a very popular song with people. So that was one situation. Another situation on the far end is my brother wrote a song in 1976 or 77. Didn't have a bridge. He went out to California to get famous. That didn't work, so he made it back to Detroit, where we're from. And I eventually had a CD of the song. I said, well, I'm going to add a bridge. So I added a bridge. He liked it, and now that's one of the top songs that people like as well. And so I added the bridge around 2021, and so that took 50 years or more between my brother and I. But usually, I can have a song done in about 2 or 3 hours if you consolidate all the time, because I go back and I edit and re-edit, and sometimes I'll add I don't like the bridge, or there's something I don't like, and so I would say maybe 3 hours, but I can do one sometimes in half an hour.
It's still quite quick.
Yeah, they just sort of come to me.
Talking from myself, because mine will take months usually.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes years, not 50, but
yeah. Well, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just, something comes to me, and I'll record on the iPhone, and a year later I'll go, I really need to finish that song, because I know it's going to be, this sounds egotistical, I know it's going to be a good song, I just have to finish it. So I've probably got 15 or maybe 15 of those that are sitting around and my guys have heard them, and they go, you got to finish that song. So.
Well, I do want to talk about green guitars more. Okay. I want to talk about your book, but we're going to take a short commercial break.
Sounds good.
Or we might do this in 2 parts.
That's fine.
So you folks stick with us, and we will be back, and we'll be talking more with RickLanders over here, who happens to be the publisher of Guitar
International Magazine.
Why do I stumble on that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, gosh. We'll be right back.
All right. Thank you.
Smoke my last cigarette.